Hi, and welcome to our project about self-directed learning, or SDL. In this project, we will share with you some information about ourselves, a flowchart describing how SDL works, research and data about the effectiveness of self-directed learning in the classroom, our Padlet of essential resources, a sample lesson plan, and our bumper sticker that gives a visual representation of our model of learning. Self-directed learning, as you will see, builds a community of learners through support and coaching, eventually encouraging students to take ownership of knowledge. Before we begin, I would like to introduce our self-directed learning team members, myself, Becca Carter, Brennan Duffy, and Jennifer Pugsley. Hi, my name is Becca Carter. I teach second grade at Cullowhee Valley School in the mountains of Western North Carolina, where I have been for 12 years. I'm entering my 22nd year of teaching. I have remained in early childhood, grades pre-K through second throughout my career. I first started my teaching career in West Africa as a Peace Corps volunteer and have continued to travel since then. Introducing students to the bigger world outside of our small town is very important to me. I'm newly ESL certified and plan to use that with adults in local programs and later to teach abroad again. I will be presenting data analysis and our bumper sticker as part of the presentation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brennan Duffy, and I am the sixth grade math teacher at Lake Middle School in Denver, Colorado. I'm currently going into my fifth year of teaching sixth grade math. I started out working at a charter school in a small suburb of Denver, and then I transitioned to Lake this previous year. For our presentation, I will be presenting the flowchart and the first resource from our data analysis practice.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Pugsley, and I am a virtual educator at Lawrence. Oh gosh. Hi, I'm Jennifer Pugsley, and I am a virtual educator at Lawrence Virtual School. I'm actually going to be entering my 9th year there. I've actually been in education for the past 13 years, and I've had the opportunity to work in a variety of educational experiences from corporate, private sector, public, charter schools, and then, of course, virtual education. My first teaching job was project-based with a 1-to-1 technology ratio and a virtual component. So I have not been in a traditional model since the very beginning. This has actually given me the opportunity to continue to work with schools of choice and the opportunity to work with families and students I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet in my tenure. I will be presenting the Padlet today and the lesson plan for part of our presentation.
All right. So like many of the models that we have studied throughout this course, self-directed learning, or SDL, has a natural progression that one would follow to meet the needs of their students. Within this flowchart, it really begins where the students would be at within the flowchart. So what that means is, while most of our students are going to be at stage 1, if you have students who are at stage 3, that's where you would begin with your kiddos. Stage 1, learners of low self-direction, but may already be in the more independent stages of stage 3 or 4. Let's begin with stage 1. In this area, the teacher takes on what would be considered the more traditional teacher role of being a coach and an authority figure in the classroom, while the student is very dependent on the teacher directives and the teacher's knowledge. As the teacher provides feedback and additional information to the students, they begin to take that feedback and apply it to their thinking and begin to develop additional skills that will allow them to transition to the second stage of self-directed learning. Stage 2 is described as learners of moderate self-direction. Within this stage, the teacher begins to introduce the idea of being the guide on the side rather than the sage on the stage, but only in the slightest bit. They will still continue to provide resources and provide scaffolds for students. In stage 2, students begin to ask questions and may begin to gather their own resources. Stage 3 is where self-directed learning really begins. Within stage 3 is where self-directed learning really starts to shine. Students are now more involved in the development of their own critical thinking skills, and they are much more involved in their learning. Teachers are now on the same level as their students and are more participants in the learning rather than being the holder of the knowledge. As students continue to develop their critical thinking skills, they move into stage 4. Within stage 4, the teacher is fully entrenched in the guide on the side mantra and allows students to dictate where their learning is going and will allow them to create their own learning outcomes or projects. As the title of this module states, now the students are really self-directed. So the first piece of our data analysis was from the Journal of Marketing Education. The authors of this piece of research were looking to prove or disprove these 5 hypotheses, which you can see on the screen. The authors of this study did not use original research to look critically at these 5 hypotheses. Instead, they did a meta-analysis of 34 different research papers to determine the validity of their hypotheses. The results of their meta-analysis were as follows. Students did state that they felt they had greater control over their learning in the SDL projects. Second, students also stated that the SDL assignments led to higher levels of self-efficacy. Thirdly, as far as high levels of motivation, students who were allowed to use SDL projects scored 20% higher in the class, but the authors did state that this could not be directly related to SDL and that there may have been other factors that affected this result. As for support, the hypothesis was confirmed by students' replies such as having to produce multiple rewrites for my original contract. It is evident that I need more guidance in getting started with the project. When beginning the project, I was unsure exactly what I was doing and how I was going to measure myself. And the last hypothesis, SDL led to improved performance. This was neither confirmed nor proven false, but rather students stated that they did feel better prepared for the job that they were going into and that they had learned valuable skills. But it cannot be stated with certainty that this was caused by self-directed learning. So based upon these findings, the authors had this implication for practice. All right. So implications for practice. My apologies, my computer is freezing. So based upon their study, the authors suggest when implementing CDL, additional support and resources should be provided for the students. This can manifest itself in the form of technology, literature, mentorship, and any source of information that can help students succeed. They also stated that it may be necessary to provide additional coaching for students in order for them to find their own path in self-directed learning. What does this mean for future research? So the authors of this paper also state that future research is needed to show the causality between self-directed learning and student motivation, which was the hypotheses that they could not prove with their meta-analysis.
Hi, our second research article called Emotional Intelligence, EI, and Self-Directed Learning, Examining Their Relation and Contribution to Better Student Learning Outcomes in Higher Education, was taken from the British Educational Research Journal. The authors were looking to see how emotional intelligence and self-directed learning contributed to key learning outcomes in higher education. Some of those outcomes were grade point average, social, cognitive, and self-growth outcomes, and students' overall satisfaction during their university experience. The authors conducted a survey twice throughout a year-long period, and students self-evaluated their own emotional intelligence. According to results of the study, emotional intelligence positively impacts self-directed learning. Because of this, grade point average, cognitive, social, and self-growth outcomes were positively affected as well. The implications for practice are that students who are emotionally regulated and define goals for themselves gain both academically and in non-academic settings. This study helps the authors understand better ways to make learning at the university level better. The authors were interested in student success beyond the classroom. The study confirms that emotional intelligence has a correlation to self-directed learning. The authors suggested that future research is needed to account for behavioral measures they did not look for in the original study. The important takeaway from reading and evaluating these articles is that now we know that students are affected in various positive ways when they are able to direct their own learning experience. They develop a greater sense of self, confidence, and feel as though they have more power over their learning.
Up next is the essential resources for our Padlet. And on the next few slides, it's going to show that, and then we're going to take a live look at the Padlet. One important takeaway that my group learned from completing a Padlet together was how easy it was to collaborate and share resources together about our particular PLC topic on self-directed learning. We wanted to not only find research resources, but easy ways that our peers could start learning about self-directed learning and the ways they could actually implement it into their classrooms. We realize as educators that we are constantly learning new strategies and methods and creative ideas to take back to our classrooms. But we know there can be many factors, including time pressure and constraints, that actually prevent us from actually implementing these new strategies with our students. Our goal was to help introduce self-directed learning to our peers, but also to provide resources to help move them forward to actually implement some of these ideas. We believe that any teacher can add self-directed learning into their toolbox, and using these resources on the Padlet format helps them to easily access and find what resources they can pull very quickly to start utilizing. We have provided steps for implementing self-directed learning in the classroom, as well as how to explore the various stages for this particular learning model. We believe that this approach will help teachers feel more confident in trying out self-directed learning methods in their classrooms. As educators, we know how important it is not to reinvent the wheel and to share resources with one another, especially since we know how limited time we have each and every day to dedicate to new learning for ourselves. We have provided video examples about how a classroom looks when they're utilizing self-directed learning, as well as templates for self-directed learning projects. We feel that our resources provide a starting point for any educator, whether they're new to self-directed learning or they're a veteran in this process. The Padlet is a great format to help organize a variety of resources, as well as to be able to provide a short description, which is important to educators so they don't have to spend hours clicking through various resources and websites trying to figure out if this is what they're looking for. The organization of Padlet, we feel, is a game changer for teachers to better spend their time more effectively, to give them the opportunity to implement these ideas. And so this is our Padlet here, where we added our resource very simply, and we wrote a simple introduction for teachers so they could realize what we have here. We realized for us, one of our biggest takeaways, how easy this was for us to collaborate and add and to bring different ideas to the table. So we've got videos on how to get started with it. What does the classroom look like? Templates. And this is a great website and resource because then we can continue to add as we find additional resources to put on our Padlet. One moment as I pull our presentation back up wherever it is. There it is. All right. So up next is our self-directed learning lesson plan. Because Becca, Brennan, and I teach from all different stages of life, we felt that it was important that we put together a lesson plan that could be adapted for all grades. But our focus was middle school, high school, but we feel that this could be adapted for elementary. We took the approach of collaborative and cooperative work that can be completed individually, but ultimately the goal is to create collaborative projects together in a project problem-based format. We believe that health is a topic that impacts all people, including adults. So we have what our content, our topic, and then what our objectives are for our students. We feel that it's important that we start off with a hook. So what's the driving question? What is going to drive students' inquiry? The driving question, it helps guide students in the inquiry process. We want to first have them watch a video as listed on the screen, to then ask them driving questions to help them brainstorm possible solutions to this challenge. We provide a structure to help students organize the process of how to drive projects forward. We know that this is merely a template, and it could expand even further on depending on the initial answers from students. So any teacher can show the video, and these are a few questions that they can ask students. Students are then encouraged to pick something that's personally compelling to them, something that matters. And then we continue with our process. How will they continue to pursue answers to this question? And so we're giving that in steps as well as teacher guided questions. We have the guiding questions built throughout so teachers can help guide the process. This is so students can actually dig deeper with their inquiry and then actually self-direct themselves. We know that many teachers have not used self-directed learning before, and we wanted to provide more insight within the lesson plan structure to help the teacher become the coach facilitator role to help students in the self-directed learning process. We know that we created a preliminary list of projects. This we felt was appropriate, especially for many teachers who may have not ever done this before. So we also want to provide this for students in case they're having trouble brainstorming, but we basically want to help guide them for what is their completed project going to be. We want students to be change makers like they watched during the hook in that video. We feel that it's critical that teachers experience this transition from being the center of instruction, where they're modeling, and where they start to transition as the guide on the side and the coach who is supporting students as they take over the decision-making process when they're learning, and ultimately they're making the decision about what project they're creating. So as you can see, there are guiding questions about the completion of this project that teachers can use to continue to help students dig deeper within their projects. One of the biggest takeaways we want for teachers is to understand how to help guide students through self-directed learning, like this example lesson plan and projects we've showed you. We want to be able to provide some guiding questions, resources, etc. that are tied into standards and learning outcomes. We know it can be difficult for teachers to relinquish the control in their classroom. We know it can be challenging to switch from providing direct instruction to then now moving into the coach guide on the side role. We know that it is difficult sometimes to let students direct their own learning. We know that this type of learning structure can be done in any classroom and at any grade level. It is important for teachers to structure their lesson plans around their standards and content before they develop their hook like we did in our lesson. Chunking needs to happen before adding in additional pieces like the hook, guiding questions, project ideas that we have provided in this lesson plan. We feel that if you start with the content, it will help a teacher build a solid lesson plan based on the content, standards, and material. I think that's the biggest struggle for teachers, is letting go of direct instruction and letting students have control, is fear that they won't get all their standards in. They won't get all the content in that they're supposed to teach that's required. We wanted to show you that it is possible to still achieve those goals within a self-directed learning format.
Hi, this is our bumper sticker. Our takeaway was that this activity really highlighted many of the themes of self-directed learning and renewed our enthusiasm for collaborative and cooperative work as we came together to create something that accurately represented our model. Before we chose a slogan and graphics for our sticker, we brainstormed collaboratively many different words and phrases that focused on this model. Some of those words were community, intrinsic motivation, lifelong learners, coach, and differentiation. Our possible slogans were teamwork makes the dream work and independently learning cooperatively. We all felt as though these two slogans, where I'm leading my own learning and Why Hide When You Have a Guide on the Side, which you've heard a lot, really captured the essence of self-directed learning. This model really is about the learner having ownership of his or her own learning with the guidance of a coach. The coach transitions into a guide on the side, so to speak, as the learner becomes more autonomous. The important learning for this project was to review what self-directed learning was about and why we chose it when we came into this class. We believe that children learn best in situations where they are supported both emotionally and cognitively, guided by their teachers, and take responsibility for their own learning. We want to see our students intrinsically excited about learning and take ownership throughout their lives.